Right, good afternoon everybody. I'm sorry we're a wee bit late, partly due to my stupidity, but we won't go into that. Apologies, I certainly have got Stephen Marks is unable to be with us, and Elaine Still is going to substitute. Councillor Mrs. Osselton is not with us, and Councillor Sanders is substituting for her. I'm not quite sure what has happened to Councillor Putty. I believe he's back from his holidays, but that's all I know. So I'm afraid it looks like it. If he doesn't turn up, please can we add him to the apologies list? Do you think he's in need? Thank you for that. Right, declarations of interest, please. Yes.
I'm a member of the Hampshire County Council Pension Fund panel.
Me too. Both bases. No, oh no, I'm not.
And can I declare an interest on behalf of all staff in relation to paper B? Thank you.
Thank you very much, yes.
I'm a member of the Hampshire County Council Pension Fund, but I was just told that I don't need to declare it.
Yes, that would be the same, I think, as Elaine Still, isn't it? Well, thank you for that. The one thing I've omitted to do is to talk about the fire evacuation procedures. I think most people here know what to do if the fire thing does go, but if you don't know, it's a matter of get down the stairs as quickly as possible and out into the park. You can join the Dicky Birds in the Avery. And that this is going to be webcast and is indeed being webcast, but please note you will not be individually on it because something's being done with the IT. We're just going to have this general thing. Is it up there? It is. Is it? Oh, right. Okay. Well, at least I can see everything down there. And I've just realised. And I am guilty. My mobile was on, and I hope everybody else's is now turned off.
I didn't have one, so.
Sorry about that. Now let's get down to business. Urgent matters. Are there any urgent matters? Do we know of any? No. Thank you. The minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Pearce wanted just a wee change in the urgent item one, didn't you? If you turn to 3/14 on the third line, the chairman responded stating that she did not consider the matter to be urgent and therefore, etc., etc. Is that okay? I think you agreed that before. Yeah. Is everybody happy with them, apart from that little extra? Thank you very much. Back to the agenda, it would help. Yes.
I'm happy with the minutes, but I'm not happy that all actions have been taken arising from the minutes. And I know that Shella is aware that there has been a failure to respond to bullet point 3 in 914.
If it's okay with the chair, I can hopefully respond to that as far as I can in my introduction to the next paper, if that's okay.
Noted, thank you. Right, paper B, which is the local government pension scheme. Shella, I think this is in your hands.
Thank you, Chair. The committee received a report at our last meeting on the 23rd of June about changes to the local government pension scheme, which apply from the 1st of April this year, and approved a new policy confirming how the council will exercise its employer discretions in this regard. Since that time, the policy has been to full council and approved, and we then sent it to the pension fund administrator at Hampshire County Council, as the administrator is checking all the policies from employing authorities, because the regulations have made some quite sweeping changes. So they have made recommendations for amendments in a number of cases where needed. And in our particular case, the administrator has recommended that we make 3 amendments to the policy to try and give greater clarity, so that everybody is very clear on how we're applying our discretions in a number of areas. And section 4 of the report explains the 3 amendments in more detail. And then I've also enclosed a revised policy with track changes on, so that you can see exactly what those changes mean in terms of the policy in Appendix 1. With regards to Councillor Leake's question about whether the revised discretions policy would be more or less expensive than the previous policy, despite best efforts to establish this, including discussions with the pension fund administrator, it's not been possible to say this categorically one way or another. But hopefully the following information might provide some reassurance. The discretions have and will continue to be used only in exceptional cases. And to illustrate this, in the past 5 years, for example, no one has been retired in the interests of the efficiency of the service. So that discretion has not been applied at all. Furthermore, only 2 employees have been granted access to immediate unreduced benefits because they've made a case on compassionate grounds, and only 1 employee has been ill health retired under tier 3. So hopefully you can see that the numbers that we're talking about to whom this policy might apply are very low. Flexible retirement has been granted on about 10 occasions in the past 5 years. However, under the old scheme, staff were automatically entitled to have the 85-year rule protections switched on if they met the 85-year rule criteria. Under the new version of the 2014 regulations, employers have a discretion to choose whether or not they apply that discretion. And so there is actually an opportunity there for the council to actually save money, because there might be occasions when we decide that we won't apply that discretion if it doesn't meet with the council's financial justification criteria, for example. So I hope that is at least some response to the question. I appreciate it isn't a complete answer, but I hope that provides some useful context and background as to how often the policy is used. Under the terms of reference for HR committee, this committee would recommend to full council any element of discretion, and I'm therefore asking the committee to recommend to council approval of the amended policy statements in Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Leake, are you happy with that response?
I've noted it, and what I will ask is that a suitably precede version of Shell's statement is recorded in the minutes so that we all know where we think we stand. Is that fair? Thank you very much.
Councillor Putty, good afternoon.
Oh,
Glad
thank
to
you.
see
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Apology for being late because I was in court, so I had to come from court. And
They let you out. did they?
yes, yes, and also can I declare my interest in that particular paper, please?
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. I might have missed something. On the 85 rule, are you saying that's not a right anymore?
Yes, that's correct. Under the old regulations, if an employee met the 85-year rule and requested flex retirement, then the 85-year rule protection automatically applied. Under the new regulations, the employer has the discretion to choose whether or not they switch on the 85-year rule. And the recommendation I'm making is that we do say that we will apply that in certain circumstances, subject to the council's financial justification criteria. So it's not an automatic switch on anymore.
Councillor Sanders. Councillor Sanders, could you put your microphone on? We missed
Sorry,
it.
I missed that. I will repeat it. It is my campaign to avoid the split infinitive and actually try and maintain qualities of English. On page 2, it should read there in the second paragraph, BDBC normally will not switch on, rather than as it is at the moment.
I have to say, I don't like them either. Thank you. Any more comments from anybody? In which case, I will...
Well, sorry. The only point I would make is that under the award of additional pension, I mean, there's nothing we can do about it, but it does seem to me that under our old rules, we had rather more protection than we do under the current or now to be rule, i.e. up to a maximum of 6,500. But I don't think there's anything we can do about it, so I'll just smile.
We like to see you smile. Thank you very much.
I do quite regularly.
In which case, I will move the recommendation at number 7 if everybody is happy. Is that agreed?
Well, subject to the comment I made, which will be incorporated into that. Yes? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Right, paper, oops, where are we? C. Not very organised here. The appointment and selection process for the new chief executive. I think probably, Sheila, is it you again?
Thank you, Chair. Our current chief executive retires from his post on the 30th of November, and the Constitution sets out the process for appointing a new chief executive within the officer employment procedure rules. The rules state that the recommendation for appointment of a preferred candidate is made by a subcommittee of HR committee, which must consist of between 4 and 6 members, including at least 1 member of cabinet, and must be politically proportionate. Full council can only approve the recommendation where no well-founded objection against the candidate has been made by any member of cabinet. So this report asks the committee to appoint a subcommittee of 6 members, and further details about the constitution of the subcommittee is provided in the report in paragraphs 4.1 to 4.3. To assist members in understanding what is required of subcommittee members, I've given to you today a proposed timeline which I've produced, which details the key milestones in the appointment process and attaches some dates to those, with the aim of possibly getting to full council on the 11th of December with a preferred candidate recommended. And so I've worked back from that date and filled in the key milestones. Oh, yeah, can you give a copy to, hang on, do you mind? Thank you. It's also recommended in the report that an executive search company is appointed to assist the subcommittee throughout the process. Much of the preparatory and background work will be carried out by myself and the executive search company if that recommendation is agreed, and guidance and support for any members involved will also be provided throughout the process if needed. To try and assist any members further, I thought it might be helpful to just explain the key functions that subcommittee members would be required to carry out. And some of those could be done virtually if that was agreed by everybody. And so the key functions are as follows: to meet with the executive search company and agree the recruitment process and selection methods to be used. For example, that might include psychometric tests, first interviews, a presentation to a group of members and staff, group exercises, and so on. To sign off the job description and person specification, and also the advert text and design. to agree the shortlist of approximately 6 candidates based on a long list of candidates that will be drawn up for us by the executive search company, to participate in the first stage of the assessment process, and then also to carry out final interviews with 2 or 3 possibly preferred candidates. It's obviously really important that there's consensus on the preferred candidate for such an important role, and for this reason it's anticipated that there will be opportunities for a wider group of members outside of just the subcommittee group and staff to be involved in the selection process should they wish to. So for example, they might be able to participate in the first stage of the selection interview process if they wish to. This particular point has also been emphasised with group leaders in a meeting which took place with them last week. So I hope that information is helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Putty.
Yes, as the paper says, that we have got an organization which is looking into it. How far and wide the recruitment is being done?
Well, the process hasn't actually started yet. But what's recommended in this paper is 2 things in terms of trying to attract candidates for the role. The first thing is that we would go out to advert, probably in the national press, and we might be looking at, for example, advertising in the Guardian jobs website and in the printed paper, and also perhaps in the MJ as an example. We would also, if the recommendation to appoint an executive search company is approved, ask the executive search company to do some headhunting for us, and that would mean that people who perhaps aren't necessarily looking for a job at the moment, those people could actually have the opportunity flagged up to them by the executive search company. They might not ordinarily see it if they're not actually actively seeking a job. So it would be a national recruitment process in effect.
You said it is national, because only just a couple of years ago, we advertised for a chief exec post, and it went in the chief exec magazine, and we had a worldwide response to that.
I mean, that is possible that could happen, because it will be on websites online, etc. as well. So if candidates were looking and they were abroad at the moment, then they would have that flagged up to them, because it would be available to them online anywhere in the world, essentially.
Councillor Mrs. Loney. I'd just like to ask Shelley, you did say earlier on that you'd be working quite closely with the company that's doing the application search and headhunting, whatever they might do. Can then, we have assurances that you'll be working on 2 of the areas that I'd like to think that we had somebody from Basingstoke and Dean working with these people? It's on the SIFT applications and agreeing of the long list and the interview of the long list candidates. I think it's really important that we have some input from this borough, from somebody who knows what we're looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Loney. I think that if we wanted to, either myself or the subcommittee members, if they preferred, could agree the long list of candidates with the executive search company, and also be clear with the executive search company exactly what sort of questions and issues they want them to focus on in the long list interview. So the process is entirely adaptable and flexible to meet our requirements as we need them.
Councillor Sanders.
I mean, having just been through a not dissimilar process for recruiting a new candidate for North West Hampshire for the next year's elections. And the way that works is you get hundreds of people wanting to stand in a very safe seat. That the initial, apart from they weed out the absolute no-hopers right at the beginning, there was a big meeting where they went through something like 50 or 100 applications with the committee that was overseeing that at the beginning, to try and get it down to a 12 who were then actually interviewed, who were then went to a second interview, who then went to the final 3. So I think that a similar sort of hierarchical process would probably be the best way, and I would hate to put the burden on Sheller of having to decide because she might finish up working for this person, or probably will finish up working for these people, of having to decide that SIFT, it should be the subcommittee that gets involved in reducing it down from the total number. Yeah, I think that's, well, it's certainly what I'd like to think that we might do in it. There's one question I was going to ask, if I may, when I've got the microphone. In terms of the appointments to the subcommittee, have we clarified, once we've appointed the subcommittee, the question of substitution on the subcommittee? Constitutionally, there was an issue that was raised, I think, at group leaders about whether that could or could not happen. I think there's a lot of arguments for saying it shouldn't happen because you'll get different people's views at different stages in the process, but that's a separate issue. Did we ever get clarification of that?
No, the Constitution is effectively silent on that point. The only thing that I would make a plea for, I guess, is part of the reason for providing this information is I do think there's something to be said ideally for consistency throughout the approach, throughout the actual task of recruiting. And on that basis, it would ideally be the case that people who are nominated to attend the subcommittee are able to make all of the meetings and don't send along substitutes. So I don't think it's so much a constitutional issue as just, for consistency, really. It would make sense if it were the same members involved throughout.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure we would all agree with that wherever it is possible. Tony Jones.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question on you were saying people who weren't on the subcommittee will be able to take part in some part of the selection. Can you explain how? Because it doesn't seem feasible to me if you've got a group choosing someone, but if you've got a wider group, how will they participate in choosing?
Again, that hasn't been decided, but I think there's a number of possible ways that could happen. An example might be, you might want our candidates, our shortlisted candidates of about 6, to give a presentation. They might, the audience that they're giving the presentation to could be a group of wider members. It wouldn't just have to be the subcommittee members, for example. It could also involve staff, as an example. There might be an opportunity for them to get involved in group discussions, or there might be several interviews during the assessment process with groups of members and staff. Something that they've done at other authorities, for example, is a speed dating session with shortlisted candidates and all members. So there's a huge range of different ways that members can become involved in it, and it's about finding the best method that works for us here as a council.
Come back on that, because I still can't see that if we have I've been around when they've done them in the past and you meet the candidates, but if I don't particularly, or a group of people don't particularly like one of their candidates, it may be overwhelmingly not like, we won't be able to have a vote and say, well, we don't want him on the shortlist, because that's what we're leaving 6 people there for. That's where I'm coming from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there is still opportunity for members to be involved and to put their views across as part of the overall process of scoring the candidates to whittle them down to the 2 or 3 candidates that go forward for final interview. So as an example, in the past when we've done presentations, all the people receiving that presentation have been given a scoring sheet, and they mark the person on an agreed criteria, agreed in advance, based on the style, for example, of presentation, the content of the presentation, and their ability to respond to the questions. Those marks given by all members would feature in terms of the overall assessment that is given to each of the candidates. So it's true that I think the people that are making the final recommendation, I think that we would have to keep the final interview confined to a panel of 6, because I think more people than that in an interview is probably unwieldy. But I do think there's opportunity for members to influence the scoring of the candidates that go forward to the agreed shortlist, and ideally we would be in a situation where really only those 2 or 3 candidates that make it to the final shortlist, everybody is in agreement already that they would all be appointable ideally.
I think you've explained that extremely well to me. On these dates, you've just done this timeline. Are they changeable at this moment in time, or are they just...
the dates aren't fixed at all. So I've just done this as a sort of a best guess of how long the various stages of the process might take. They will need to be agreed with the subcommittee and, of course, with the executive search company if that's agreed, subject to their availability, etc., and things like room bookings and so on.
Councillor Pearce, I'm sorry I missed you last time.
I'm not used to being missed, so. First question is, how do we go about choosing an agency?
I've obtained quotes from 3 agencies, all of whom have been personally recommended to me by colleagues in other councils who have recently appointed chief executives. So they are all personal recommendations. Due to the value of the actual contract itself, effectively, we would be at a situation where we would need to obtain a minimum of 3 quotes. Then any decision I'm recommending would be based on our contract standing orders for a standard procurement exercise. And I'm recommending an approach of 60% of the score being given on cost and 40% on quality. And the quality would be based on the candidate's ability to meet our requirements as a council, and also on their previous experience of having done senior level, ideally chief executive recruitment in a large district council in the recent past, and to provide examples and testimonials of where they have done that. And that's the process I'm recommending.
That sounds good. I just comment on the subs. I agree. I think I agree that there's an issue of consistency. But if people are on holiday or are unwell, then I think we should be saying those are exceptional circumstances, and subs should be allowed. But I don't think you said anything different to that. I'm just qualifying it. My third question, well, statement. This is quite ambitious in my experience. I mean, I hope we can stick to it, but it will require a commitment on everybody's part, not just ours, but that the executive search company have got to be prepared to accept it. After all, they're working for us. I mean, it's great, but it is ambitious. I tend to agree that, I think everybody's agreeing that we should ensure that we're involved in some of these areas where it's been starred on the process. There's quite a lot actually been started on the process for the executive search company. I think it would be foolish to let them go ahead and interview a long list, present us with a short list of maybe a dozen when we haven't seen what we want to see. And they may have experience, but then at the same time, whoever it is going to be working with us. And so there are Basingstoke specific issues that we may be able to get across to an executive search company, but by the same token, it may well be that we can't get that across. So I certainly think that input into sifting applications and interviewing long list, most of those in fact, should involve some or all of the committee. So it is a big commitment. Do you want to stop there? I've got 2 more questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Just in relation to your first point, the 3 quotes that I've received are all based on the process taking between about 10 and 12 weeks. So the executive search companies think this is doable, but I agree entirely that it does require commitment of everybody concerned to make that actually happen. In terms of the involvement of the subcommittee in the processes that I've starred on this timetable, I agree entirely, and perhaps the wording I've used is a bit clumsy. I think to say that the action carried out by the executive search company in consultation at all times with the subcommittee is perhaps a better way of saying that, and I agree that members can be, I suppose what I'm trying to get across is that members aren't having to do all of the donkey work themselves. Some of that will be done by the executive search company and by myself to assist. So we won't be spending hours and hours reading through every single application if we receive 150, for example, for the job.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with that, but we can use things like Skype. It's now free for conferences, so actually attending this office or even their offices. So I'd just leave it. Now, next point. Oh, how much are they going to charge us?
The quotes I've got are between £13,750 and £18,000. On top of that, you would also have to pay the consultant's expenses, and it doesn't include in any of the cases the cost of recruitment advertising in the various, the Guardian, for example, or wherever else we might want to advertise. And it also doesn't include the cost of any psychometric tests that we might want to use with the candidates.
Okay, that's cheap. My experience of executive searches is a third of the salary paid, a third each, you know, so a third on appointment, a third on shortlisting, and a third. So that is very, very cheap for all of that. I mean, the press advertising should, yeah, I guess it has to go ahead, but it's become so much more cheap, less expensive now because of the onset of the internet. I mean, the Guardian prices have come, it's not huge anymore. Training for interviewing. I just lay that again. I mean, I've been involved in training for people for interviewing. Presumably, you're going to run a session for us all, so we're all up to the same standard.
Yes, indeed. The executive search companies, all of them that I've spoken to, have offered that training as part of their package, or alternatively, if members would prefer, I can deliver that training to you. So it's certainly available if needed.
I think it probably ought to be, this is my opinion, that it ought to be internal because it's a Basingstoke appointment, and we surely have a recruitment policy which we would follow in the same way. So why would they need to do it? Is, you know, it's up to you, but I would think it would be better done internally. I think that was the issue of equal opportunity. I know we say all the right things, but it's sort of on the back of Councillor Putty's point that people will come from all over the place if the advert's out on the internet, which it will be. How are you going to make sure that that is equitably applied, and what will the executive agency bring to that table?
In terms of the actual equality and diversity, etc., the recruitment agency will be following our policies in terms of equality and diversity, which do emphasise the fact that any recruitment process has to be an open and fair and transparent one, with the relevant people involved at the right stages. So that will be outlined as part of the brief that's given to the executive search company that's appointed, all of whom have assured me that they are well used to working within the remit of the equality and diversity legislation and so on. In terms of candidates coming from further afield, I would anticipate that there would be relocation assistance available to the successful candidate, subject to the agreement of members, obviously. And we do have a policy that allows for that. And we do also have a policy of reimbursing reasonable travel expenses as well for people attending interviews with us. So hopefully that just broadens that field too.
My final point is psychometric testing has been mentioned, as has a presentation to the whole of the council. The outcomes of both of those must necessarily form part of the process for the shortlist, mustn't they? That they are indicators of where we might start to probe in questioning. But they're not the deal breakers. In other words, we're not making a decision based on a particular performance on a IOPQ 32 or something like that. And the same with the whole council sees a presentation. They won't necessarily be looking at it. I'm sure they won't. Everybody will look at it differently. So again, that has to be, and I think we have to make this clear, that it will provide us with more information to be able to determine the right sort of questions and the approach to take, but it isn't definitive. Yes, they're part of the process, but it's not definitive.
Yes, I agree entirely with that. Thank you.
Well done. Councillor Putty.
Thanks, Chairman. With regards to the job description, will that be a generic one, or will it be one which will be designed for our purpose here? so that it is for our organization, and who will be the people who will design the job description?
I've sent all members a copy of the current job description and person specification for the role. I sent that out with the briefing note that came out on the 19th of August. So there is a specific one for Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council. It will need to be updated. At the group leaders meeting last week, we asked the group leaders to discuss that in their groups and make suggestions perhaps for things that might need to be changed or added to within that person spec, and we're meeting with them again on the 15th of September to receive their comments.
Last thing I really want to ask is with regards to, will we be looking at the going rate of salary, or because I remember that the last time when we appointed our chief executive, we had some sort of arrangement that we had to do. So how this one will be carried out?
Under our pay policy statement as a council, we set out what the chief executive's pay rate is, and there is a fixed rate of pay, there is a fixed scale of pay for the chief executive's post. There is flexibility within that scale to appoint somebody higher up the scale. So there are 5 incremental points within the scale, and you could, based on experience, skills, etc., what their current salary is, for example, decide that you wish to appoint them slightly higher up the scale, but it has to be within the agreed salary rate, within the agreed pay band for the chief executive. So there's no flexibility outside of that.
Just one thing that just slightly, I can't say bothering me, but I'm aware of. Has been discussion in all the different groups, all except the Conservatives, as to the way forward. And obviously we're all talking about a like-for-like change. The Conservative group have not actually met until tonight, or will not be meeting till tonight. So we're working on assumptions just at the moment that perhaps they will be joining the Labour group and the Liberals, in that we carry forward with but I just thought I ought to just mention this, because I can't believe there will be an upturn tonight, but I felt I ought to mention it because we have been just assuming so far. Is that fair?
I'm not sure it is. I'm sorry. The agenda for this committee has been out for over a week. We all knew it was going to be discussed. Clive circulated a paper. What's decided here is decided here. And if the Conservative group are at odds with that, well, that is a bit of a shame, really. But, you know, everybody's had a chance. It's at this meeting. If it doesn't get agreed at this meeting, you have to wait to the next meeting, which could be December, and this will be put off until March. So, no, I don't think that's really fair. Sorry, Chair.
I actually think it is fair. It's just the way it's handled.
Because this was discussed at the group leaders, and I think there was a very clear consensus amongst all group leaders that it was important that all members should have felt that they've had an opportunity to input, and because of timing that wasn't going to be possible until this evening. For the Conservative members to get together, it's obviously much easier if you've only got 3 members in a group. You can meet, or you can just talk on the telephone together, and it becomes possible. I think it's very important that we don't have a political bias in any way in this process. We're appointing a leader of the officer team for the future, for the long-term future, at least for 5 or 10 years. Therefore, I think it is important that there is as broad a consensus as we can get amongst the political groups on this. I believe, because we've had no strong views put forward by any members of the Conservative group, that the general consensus will be very clearly in favour of like for like. But actually what this paper is doing is really asking for the formation of the subgroup. At that stage, if we've got consensus of the way we want to go forward, then the subgroup acts on that basis. And we have said that we will feed back to the next group leaders meeting on the 15th, which is next Monday, isn't it? I think the outcomes of tonight's meeting. I'm not foreseeing there being any difficulties with this. I think it's a very clear view, and there is similarly we have to discuss tonight the interim arrangements as well, so that they can be put in place. But I really don't want to create problems where there aren't any. It's all been going reasonably well in a fairly collegiate sense up until now. I've no reason to think that should not be the case going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Sanders, for agreeing with me. Right, the
I
way
always agree with the chair. I find it gets you into trouble if you don't.
right. Unless anybody's got any further questions, I think we should go forward with regard to the subcommittees and things. Is that what you have in mind? Yes.
I should just for completeness point out that, of course, I have a dual role here as the portfolio holder as well, but my role as the portfolio holder come oblique leader, I've tried to make this clear in the note which we sent out, is purely to make sure that the process happens as we're in terms of organisation along the lines that the subgroup decides it wants it to happen. So I'm just here as a facilitator. I actually have no role in specifically in the process because of my position. And the other thing, since we keep talking about the Guardian and its website and things, to just point out that my son actually designs it and helps run it. So it was the website. So this was an unexpected potential conflict of interest.
Can I ask if anybody actually reads it?
I have to say I'm rather worried about having chief executives who do, but there you go. No, it's not about political, it's about the quality of the newspaper. But,
Oh dear. Right, could we... we
It does. You want to read it. I read it every day.
right, well, can we change the subject? I think- let's start. We've got 3 groups here. Let's start with the Liberal Democrats. Have you got a member that you would like to suggest? Or is it yourself?
It has to be a member of the committee.
Not. Yes, exactly. Right. And the Labour?
Myself and Councillor.
Right. Yes, I am looking for you as you're the leader. I assume you would like to be on it.
I would like to put myself forward as I can also be the token cabinet member as well, which is required by the Constitution.
Chair, I'm not complaining, but I've misinterpreted what you were saying. Earlier, you were saying as leader and group leader, you couldn't be part of the process. Have I?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I will clarify that for you. What I was saying was that I don't actually have any specific role in the process as a result of being leader or portfolio holder, other than to make sure that the process is carried through fully in accordance with the wishes of the subgroup and therefore of this committee. That's the only role. There's no extra position that extra role that I have to play as a result of being leader in it. So I just wanted to make that clear. But the subgroup does have to have a cabinet member on it, and as I'm the only cabinet member currently on the committee, I shall put myself forward to that, and it makes it easier anyway. The intention is that I don't know why we missed it last time, she will be resigning from the committee and I will be taking her place on it. So we just haven't got the opportunity to do that until we get the next cycle.
I would be happy to volunteer, but I have to make it clear that I am not available on the week beginning the 29th of September, and indeed Councillor Mrs. Still will be substituting for me at that meeting. But I am prepared to be on the subcommittee, but I will not be available then. And therefore it's a question whether it would be better that Councillor Mrs. Still became a permanent member of this committee and took my place. Yes, she can. She can be substituted each time. Thank you. So if there are to be no substitutes, then I would nominate Councillor Mrs. Still in my place.
I was only going to say that I think the work that has to be done on the 29th, which is largely procedural, the intention was that the meeting that we have of this committee on the 29th, I think it is, will largely be a one-item agenda, which is to deal with the issue of a recommendation on the interim arrangements, and that we could then adjourn the full meeting and move immediately to a subgroup meeting, since we'd all be here, the subgroup will be here, and get on with a lot of administrative, the first stages of the administrative work. We're not actually getting into the selection process, and it's really at the selection process where we need consistency as much as anything else. And since John's been through the experience of having to appoint a chief exec in the past, the last time too, indeed, I would quite value his input if everybody else is happy with that. Noise is off, we shall ignore.
Are you happy with that?
Yes, except it does say meeting with subcommittee and executive search company to finalise recruitment process also takes place in that week. So that again makes it slightly more different. I mean, would it be possible, bearing in mind our group hasn't met, if we actually notify you tomorrow morning who our third member will be, whether it's me or Councillor Mrs. Still? Would that be acceptable to everybody? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Can I say you haven't mentioned me yet? I was going to say, is everybody happy that we do that with regard to, after the meeting tonight?
I don't really mind. So I'm happy in one sense, but if somebody was ill and unexpectedly detained or run over by a horse, then we would have to, poor horse, we would have to create a substitute, wouldn't we? So
I'm sure there are exceptions always.
yeah. So I mean, I'll just leave that with you because I'm not here. I'm here on the 29th, but I'm not around after that until the 13th of October. And if needs be, I can get a substitute for that. So.
I think substitutes are required.
If it helps, I think a lot of the work running up to the 29th of September can be done offline anyway, virtually. I think we can be drafting advert text, agreeing the person spec, etc. by email and so on. So I don't see that initial meeting as being a particular problem, to be honest.
Can I just mention that I haven't put my name forward, but hopefully after tonight we'll go forward.
So normally assume.
I'm just being a bit cheeky. It's all right. Councillor Putty.
Yes, John. I would have liked to be on the subgroup. I have got experience of recruiting chief exec, and I really feel that looking at the timing here, the only meeting that I would have missed were the two last one, which was when recommending preferred candidate to full council, and the preferred candidate approved by full council. That's the only two that I would have missed in that chart here.
Thank you for that. If we're discussing it tonight, we'll be able to put forward our recommended people. Okay? Yes.
Just the point I made earlier, these dates aren't set in stone as long as it falls within the timeline. If there's a couple of people who can't make it and you can move the dates, the whole thing falls into place, does it not? Yeah.
Thank you for that. Sorry. Thank you. We've got as far as some of the appointees for the subcommittee, and the rest will be notified, which everybody's agreed with. With regard to number 2, it's regarding the executive search company. Are we happy to, what do we do? Do we choose at the subcommittee? Or
If members are happy, what I would suggest that it would be, the ideal would be to the subcommittee members to be consulted ideally this week, and I would suggest I can email you the proposals, I can email you the quality and cross criteria that I've come up with, and seek your final approval for appointing one company this week ideally.
great, is everybody happy with that?
I think it would be helpful, because we've been through this anyway, if you could email, along with the criteria, email a recommendation against which people can rail or whatever. But otherwise, I think if you ask 6 people, you may finish up with 6 different views, even though you've only got 4 candidates or so.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Santos, I should have clarified. When I say I will email you the assessment matrix that I will go through effectively, and the top scoring candidate based on my assessment for you to hopefully agree with.
Chairman, could we just ask that if you do only recommend one, that could we be told the estimated costs of the other 2, so that we have a benchmark to see how much we might be paying? Sorry?
I was just saying they should have all the full information. We want to keep the whole thing open. It's just that it's always good for somebody to have done the thinking in advance. Again, when I've got the microphone, if I may, Chair, I just want to come back to this point about substitutions. I agree we can substitute all the way through, but I do get a little worried when we get down to the basically the 2 likely interview dates, that from a point of view of ensuring that there is no comeback from candidates, that there is an imbalance in the way that this was done, of people being shifted on and off, that we must insist at that stage that the subgroup members who have to be at both of those, and that there should not be substitutions at that stage. So if somebody does get run over by a horse or whatever, I'm afraid we'll just have to do with 5 at that stage. But I think it's so important that we have consistency between those stages for people, because it's very instructive when you see somebody at second interview that you thought was really good first time round, and you can compare the 2 impressions that you have. So I would strongly recommend that, and I hope that could be supported by the rest of the committee.
Thank you very much. Very good point. Yes, Councillor Viss.
Yeah, in principle, I think the leader's quite right. It really depends on what's preventing a member coming. I think if it's something that could be where we could rearrange for a day or 2, then we ought to consider that for the candidate's sake. But yeah, in principle, I think you're absolutely right.
Right. Thank you. If everybody's in agreement, is that you're happy with that for the notes? Yeah. Thank you. Right. Paper D is the minutes of the Joint Consultative Committee. Some of us were on it, so know what's in it. Does anybody have any?
Some of us have read it.
And some of, indeed, some people have read it, I'm told. Does anybody have any comments on it, please?
No.
Everybody happy? So it's noted. Oops, Councillor Sanders.
I wanted to ask, because I did raise this question about the weekly staff email being available for councillors.
Yeah.
Is anybody ever going to action this, or because it's several weeks after we all nodded very positively this would be a good thing, and I've not seen one.
The intended audience for the email it is written for staff. I'm very happy to copy it to members if that would be useful. And some of the information I know gets picked up in the members' bulletin. But if it would help, I'm very happy to forward the email on to all the council members.
Can I just say that Shella did very kindly send me some copies, which I was actually going to analyse terribly efficiently, which I haven't done yet because I've been away. Some of the bits that I did read, I thought we as councillors would really appreciate. Some of it, I think, wasn't very terribly appropriate, and I thought maybe the staff might not like it either if we had it. So I think we have to be careful.
It was just on the subject of what's in the weekly bulletin, because I was catching up with my emails this morning and I probably failed to notice it until this morning, that there were, in one of them, the announcement of 3 new employees. But of course it didn't actually tell me who'd left, and that is equally useful because quite often one's waiting for an email or a response from an officer. You don't get one, and then when you chase it, you find he or she left about a month before. So it would be jolly useful to know who's coming, but also who's gone. I don't know, is that something we could do? It just makes life easier, because it is very frustrating. I had a planning one, and I couldn't think why I wasn't getting response until I phoned. Oh no, she left a month ago.
Yes, certainly. We've included the new starter information in the members' bulletin as of this week. So that was a request of a member to include that. Yes, yes. So, and if there are any leavers within the period as well, we will include that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say I've made that comment, haven't I, before, and it really would be very, very helpful. Is everybody happy? So if we don't really adjourn, but we finish this meeting and then go on to our teaching.
Yep.
Yes, comfort break all round, okay? I'm told I have to say meeting is closed at about 3:30.